You're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam, streaming on iTunes, Google Podcasts, and at DCAUreview.com. Now, here's today's episode.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 59 of the DCAU Review. I'm Cal, and with me, as always, is my good brother, Liam. Liam, we are going to have a historic episode of the DCAU Review today. If people are just tuning in, if this is their first episode, or maybe they haven't listened for a while, you are in for a treat today. We are covering an all-time classic, right, Liam?
Well, depending on your definition of the word classic, if you are a fan of the so bad it's good, well, first of all, I don't even think this qualifies for that, because I did not enjoy myself watching. The episode in question is Superman the Animated Series episode Unity.
Which, we're going to be upfront, we're not the first person and will not be the last people to express that this is not a good episode.
So, we were talking, just a little backstory, when we were planning on doing Superman for this month, we knew we had 5 Saturdays in the month of June. So we said, well, we don't want to just pick all the best episodes, because since we don't review Superman in order, we wanted to try to, because then the next time we come back, we just have nothing but bad episodes. So we're trying to space out, the really good ones, and also just maybe take a look at one that's generally been maligned and disliked over the years and see, hey, maybe it wouldn't be so bad.
We've had some experience with that as far as Batman the Animated Series is concerned. We watched the Underdwellers.
Sure.
In the bad episode jar.
Yeah.
And we watched, some people don't like The Forgotten.
Yes.
And I think we have that holds a special place for us. That tends to be on the lower end of a lot of people's rankings of Batman the Animated Series. There are things that we didn't like about that episode, but still, there are episodes that some people may say, this is hot garbage, I don't like this. And doing what we do with our critical eye, we're like, well, I think there's things to enjoy in it. Or it may just hold a special place in your heart.
Yeah.
We've also had the flip of that. We had Dollar in the Bad Episode Jar, Fear of Victory.
Yeah.
And you and I did not like that episode at all.
To date.
It
was the lowest scored episode that we've ever had, Fear of Victory, the Batman episode.
Whereas we got a lot of feedback from people saying that they love that episode. That episode is near and dear to them. And they're wrong. But, no, that's their opinion. They're welcome to it. So, the episode we started today, Unity, we came in with, okay, maybe this will be one of those episodes that isn't as bad as people say it is, right?
Yeah, I sent out a little DM to the Tim Talk guys, to World's Finest Database, to the Watchtower Database people, and a couple other fellow DCAU podcasters and content creators, and just said, hey, we're looking for a really, an episode that's thought of as really bad as Superman. What do you guys recommend? And almost everybody that I messaged mentioned this episode, as well as one or two other that we'll maybe cover the next time we do a month of Superman episodes. But I was like, but I remembered this one specifically from my childhood, because this episode terrified me as a 7-year-old child, or whatever I was at the time. I was briefly banned from watching Superman the Animated Series because of it by my parents. So I remembered this episode because of that, and because I was not allowed to watch it. I certainly was, even when I was allowed again to watch Superman, I wasn't allowed to watch this episode. If it ever did come back on, I wouldn't be surprised if Kids WB just wanted to bury this and never even aired it in a rerun. But
here's the sad thing. I definitely remember seeing this episode, and we were talking that the third season didn't get a lot of replay from my recollection because Superman the Animated Series didn't have as much staying power as Batman the Animated Series, where Batman the Animated Series had tons of many more episodes, probably 30, 40 more episodes, I think, than Superman the Animated Series ended with. So Superman the Animated Series only had a limited amount that you ran through, and those first 2 seasons, it's 30 episodes or something like that in those first 2 seasons. So, you're going to run through, you're going to double up. If you play an episode every single week, you're doubling up with, 20 weeks left to go in the year.
Yeah.
So there's just going to be some overlap, and we saw those episodes over and over again. Somehow, though, despite not remembering most of the third season and seeing them over and over again, I saw this episode a lot. a lot. And I'm still traumatized as an adult watching this thing, man. Let's start breaking it down. So, give me the official IMDb synopsis for this fantastic classic here.
Okay. And the the synopsis reads as such. Upon returning from Metropolis, Kara finds the Kents, and most of the population of Smallville as well, under the thrall of a strange, itinerant preacher.
Okay. That is one way to put it. So I'm going to say the only probably positive thing, and I will let you go. And if you have anything positive you want to say, I was okay with the opening bit where Kara goes to Metropolis.
Yeah,
I thought
that was fun.
That was fun. She's there. She's on summer break. She can't wait to leave wait to leave Smallville to go visit Metropolis, hang out with Clark. Has these pictures that she's sending back to Ma and Pa Kent of her time there. She's doing all these activities. She even gets a mention. She mentions Barbara Gordon being jealous, which is a throwback to an episode we haven't covered yet, but Girls' Night Out.
Yeah.
Where those two have an interaction and strike up a friendship. So that was fun.
Yeah.
That was the fun part of this episode.
A little bit of her fighting Volcana in Metropolis. A little quick 30-second scene. And it's okay, this is cute. This is fun. Little side story here. That's fine. And then she comes back to Smallville, and immediately everybody has been put under the influence of this mysterious preacher, who she actually saw when she was getting on the bus to go to Metropolis. He was getting off, so. So Ma and Pa, under the control of this guy, take her to this circus tent where a giant tentacled alien thing is shooting tentacles into all of these people, and I guess draining their life force. And then the preacher man is then draining from the giant tentacle thing. So I guess the idea is the giant alien tentacle thing is like a machine that sucks the life and then shoots it into the head alien preacher guy, Reverend Howell, as his name is put here. But then from there, so Supergirl escapes. She takes Ma Kent with her. They go to a doctor. Ma Kent possesses the doctors, and then Superman figures out how to stop them, Cal. And I know you want to talk about this.
So,
the resolution.
I'm in my 30s, and I've seen this episode before, and I could not have told you what was happening before. I probably would have told you based on... And we actually had to rewind it, because there's a line that Superman uses. I thought this whole time the way they were defeating it was heat vision.
Yeah.
That they were using heat vision. And then I see the way that it was animated, and it's not red like heat vision. It's burning like heat vision.
Yes.
Burning these tentacles. But no. Superman discovers, as he's sitting at a desk, using a microscope to observe this alien tentacle, that his X-ray vision affects it somehow. So, for the first time in the history of the Superman character, I'm going to go out on a limb here, they decided, as a plot device in this episode, that when Superman uses his X-ray vision, it projects. So he uses it and projects some sort of radiation of some kind when he uses his X-ray vision, and he's able to focus and project it in such a precise way that he can narrow the scope to the width or length of the tentacles to radiate them, thus affecting them, damaging them, and killing them, and thus breaking free the people that are possessed. Because we learn that the tentacle is wrapped around the brain stem of the people, and that's how the monster is draining from them.
Yeah.
That is not a thing. Superman it's like I've never heard of Superman's X-ray vision being a literal X-ray. So you're telling me every time he uses his X-ray vision, he's literally taking an X-ray of your body.
He's firing radiation at you or at various buildings around Metropolis.
Right.
The whole town must be a hot zone by now.
Right, which would lead you to believe that he probably killed a couple dozen people from radiation poisoning. You know, when I get my teeth X-rayed at the dentist, they put that giant vest on you so that protect you from they're supposed to protect you from radiation. That's in a dentist's office. Superman, they take precautions there. Superman's just flying around, X-raying this person's stuff, X-raying this car, exposing people to you expect me to believe that's how this happens?
Apparently. But that's basically the resolution is Superman and Supergirl fly back to Smallville. They X-ray all of the tentacles out of the people, at which point the Reverend, his skin bursts, and he turns into a slightly different giant tentacle monster, and he and the first tentacle monster thing fight Superman and Supergirl, and Superman rips him in half. Didn't know he could regenerate, by the way. He just tears him in half. And then, they X-ray him into submission, and thus ends our story.
No explanation of how this monster got to Earth.
Nope.
No, there's a throwaway line from Reverend Howell / the Unity Monster where he says they've been doing this for thousands of years and thousands of planets or societies before them will fall. There's no explanation. How did this monster get to Earth?
No.
Where did this Reverend come from? Why did they choose Smallville, Kansas, of all places, to begin their diabolical takeover plan?
Yeah, there's a lot of happenstance. And you know what they could have done to at least make this slightly less...
Everything?
Yes. This could have been Starro.
Yes!
Like, this could have... There are existing characters in the DC universe that are alien parasites that attach themselves to humans and other creatures and try to slowly, turn the entire world into their own private army. Those characters exist. Starro exists in the comics. He shows up later in Batman Beyond. So it's not like, we can't use Starro for some reason. It's like they just chose not to and instead use this nameless, faceless tentacle monster thing. And Superman defeats it by X-raying it.
It was bad. I don't know. I went in... When you go in with low expectations, the general thought is, this can't be as bad as I think it's going to be.
Right. If you expect it to be one of the worst episodes you've ever watched, you kind of think, okay, maybe it'll end up just kind of being middle of the road at least, or maybe it'll surprise you in some way. And
it surprised me at how incredibly dumb.
Well, that's the thing.
Stupid.
It was worse. It was worse than I expected.
It wasn't just a bad story. It was dumb.
Yeah.
And it was like the final scene where the Reverend turns into the giant monster, and then the other monster is trying to come join him, but they don't why the other thing is all of a sudden mobile and is running around. So there's two giant tentacle monsters now.
Yeah.
What? And if there's stuff shooting out of people's throats, now to people's stomachs, now to people's heads, and it looks like Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man webbing shooting out everywhere. And people are pale and zombie-like, but I don't know if this was supposed to be a commentary on organized religion. I don't know if this was supposed to be a commentary on anything. I don't know where this was written by. This
is co-written. There were two writers.
Two guys thought this up.
Right, as well as everybody else who would have had to sign off on it and done the scripting and typing for it and animated it and everything. Yes, Paul Dini and Rich Fogel wrote this episode together, apparently.
Paul Dini, mind you, the guy that wrote the Emmy Award-winning Heart of Ice episode.
And who knows how many other classics.
Right.
Dozens and dozens of other great episodes of Batman and Superman and Batman Beyond.
And you're allowed, like you said before we went on the air, no one's batting 1,000.
Right.
You're going to have a miss here or there. But this feels like you came up to the plate and didn't strike out. You came to the plate ready to play football. Like, you're wearing
came to the plate, you somehow swung and missed and hit yourself in the balls.
Right.
Like,
what?
Like, what was he even trying to do up there? It doesn't even make any sense.
Oh my gosh. This is so bad. I think we need to get to our scores.
All
Because
right.
we could literally talk about how bad this is for quite a long time.
And we already have.
My score, this is going to be, and we talked about this before going on the air, whether or not this is feasible or not, and this is our show, so this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
The plot gets a 0.
Wow.
This is the first, like, I'm going to get a sound effect for a 0 score. I'm going to figure out maybe, like, the perfect score sound effect in reverse, or, like, a dying version of that. This is bad. There is nothing about this episode. I like the Supergirl stuff at the beginning, but unfortunately, that is, if this had been a 5-minute episode, I would have been better than 20.
Yeah,
just a short of the Supergirl stuff. Perfect. But 22 minutes of this crap, no. 0. 0 out of 10, Liam.
All right, fair enough.
The lowest score in the history of the DCAU review of our 59 episodes. 0.
Yeah, I gave it 1 out of 10, so not far off from you. It's bad, man. Like, it's the worst plot of any episode that we've reviewed, and that's reflected in our scores. But it's, I just keep coming back to, it's not like Brave New Metropolis, Dollar in the Bad episode jar, where, like, I expected to really like it, and it was terrible. Like, I knew this was bad and silly, and it was still worse.
Right, it's not enjoyable bad. It is not the let's have fun while we're doing this bad. It's just, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's very bad. Okay, moving on. Let's go to music, Liam. I don't have anything to say about the music. There's nothing. There's a little Superman, a little Supergirl, and then it's just mood-setting music, a little frantic. Oh no, Superman has to stop the monster again.
Yeah.
3 out of 10.
Yeah, I went 4 out of 10. Like, it's not super offensive, but there's nothing great about it either. And when everything else is bad or weird or dumb in the episode, you could have used music to really at least bring up the average a little bit, and it kind of hangs back, unfortunately.
All right, nothing else to add to that. Let's talk about animation. Okay, I'm going to preface this by saying the animation, for what it's worth, was fine. There's our director.
Yeah, it's a Japanese man named Shinichi Tsuji, who I assume was brought in because of the tentacle monster. Like, and that sounds racist as hell, I know, and I apologize. But I can't imagine why else, because that name, I'm pretty good with at least recognizing names that I see repeatedly, and there are certainly other Japanese people who work on these shows that do a great job, but I've never heard this man, and certainly not as a series director. Like, you think of the Butch Lukics, Kurt Gaetas, Dan Rebas, those type of names, or the usual directors. You know, James Tucker comes in a little later on as well, obviously. So I assume Shinichi Tsuji was brought in for his expertise because it's sort of an Eastern animation thing to have the giant monster with all the tentacles and...
Correct. And all you need to do is watch the sequence where the Reverend transforms into the spider tentacle monster.
Yeah.
And it's clearly very... I looked over you. I said, oh, we're watching an anime. There's even a close-up shot of the Reverend right before you see the tentacle come out of him the first time, and his teeth, they show his teeth, like a close-up of his face, and his teeth are, expression on his face is straight out of Japanese animation.
Yeah.
It's not your normal, typical...
The Reverend in this episode has a vibe I can only describe as rapey.
It's bad.
He's real creepy, which I guess is kind of the point.
Yeah, he's supposed to be creepy.
So we wanted to say all of that to say, technically, the animation in this episode is pretty good.
I would agree.
Like, I mean, there's some stuff, like, some of the characters are a little off-model, especially Supergirl and Ma Kent, I felt, looked weird in this episode.
Yes, her eyes are very bizarre.
Yeah, there's some weird stuff, but for the most part, the action itself, I think, is pretty well animated and everything. But
right, it's a big but.
So I wanted to say that to say just because it's technically good doesn't mean that we're necessarily always going to enjoy it. And so, I have to say, I hated the visuals of this episode. The animation itself is fine and even good, but the visuals of this, I hated.
Yeah, same. Yeah, that, like, their visuals are interesting, but I didn't want to see them. I was tired of seeing things come out of people.
Yeah.
I was tired of seeing people's mouths open and eyeballs dilate and stuff shoot out of them. I was tired of seeing when the skin starts to rip on, like, that whole transformation, and then that when Superman rips the monster apart, like, it just made my skin crawl.
It was creepy.
Then the monster, like, is crushing him, trying to reform, and he pops out of it in, like, this goo liquid. Like, it was gross. It was gross. I didn't like it. Didn't enjoy it. Hated it. I gave it a 2 out of 10 because the technical animation isn't bad, but I hated the visuals. Hated them.
Yeah, I went 3 out of 10, so not a lot of difference there. It's just an unpleasant thing to watch. It's not fun, creepy, and, like, I mean, I'm not a horror movie guy anyway, but there are certain episodes that play on, like, more horror elements that I've enjoyed of these various series. So it's not as though, it's just I don't like horror stuff. It's like, no, it was specifically this stuff was weird and I didn't like it, and yeah, it was bad. It was bad, and the scores reflect that.
Absolutely. All right, our final category of the day is going to be our voice actors, who, the best I can say, and we'll let you run down our cast characters.
Yeah.
The best I can say about this is this was the thing that was least offensive in this episode. I think that there's not a lot of good dialogue. It's a lot of... I told you, I feel like Dennis Haysbert is the one who does the heavy lifting in this episode.
He does all the exposition, basically, about what the alien parasites are and why you can't just rip it out of them, basically.
Right. And 5 out of 10. It's fine. The voices are fine. We'll talk about the guest stars. 5 out of 10 was my score.
Yeah, I went 4 out of 10. As far as guest stars go, as you mentioned, Dennis Haysbert is unnamed Dr. Man. You have Jason Marsden, the future Snapper Carr, as Carr's friend Owen, who's just kind of like this geeky kid who gives her comic books at the start of the episode and then is, infected with the Unity parasite in when she comes back to Smallville. And then we had, playing the Reverend / Unity is Stephen Root, who is famously in Office Space and Dodgeball and several other things. He's a voice on King of the Hill.
Just Friends. A couple. Yeah, you know him. He's
Yeah, so he's a famous guy. You would definitely know him if you saw him, if you don't recognize the name. And I guess for what's asked of him, he does a fine job. I don't have a lot of complaints about him beyond just what we've already covered in visuals and plot. Like, he's just he's doing his job. He plays a creepy preacher man.
He's creepy.
He does his job well, and then outside of that, you have Mike Farrell and Shelley Fabares as Jonathan and Martha Kent, who are just kind of there, and it's like, I think voice acting is maybe the least offensive part of our 4 main categories here, but I still don't think it was very good. So like I said, 4 out of 10. They're fine for what's asked of them, but it's just, the plot and the visuals and everything just kind of bring the average for the whole class down.
All right. Well, I think that brings us to our... Oh.
Wait.
Yes.
But that's not the usual bonus point sound.
No, this isn't a bonus point sound, actually. This is a... What did I call it?
A point deduction?
This is a point deduction sound, Liam. Another first. We told you this would be a historic episode. So this episode gets a point deduction for me because as it's standing right now, this episode has reached double digits. And I don't think it deserves that. I don't think it deserves double digits for a final score. And the reason I would say that is at the very end of this, we were discussing this. We didn't discuss our score specifically, but we were discussing our thoughts on this before we went on the air. We both had the realization, I had the realization that this episode is an episode of a children's cartoon. And we talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
And we sometimes have to give the cartoon a break because, all right, it's a 22-minute episode of kids' cartoon. Okay, so happenstance happens, and you have to have some fun and wacky chicanery that happens
Right.
for
Sometimes
plots.
we need to learn lessons about climbing on power lines and things like that.
Children and guns and all that, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Or sometimes the storyline of Alfred chasing the kid around in Wayne Manor, the orphan
Right.
kid around in Wayne Manor, is funny enough to redeem, or to give a higher score in one area of the plot of an otherwise abysmal episode.
Yeah.
This episode is a children's cartoon. Can you imagine, and you don't have to imagine, because you already mentioned, you got banned from watching this because of how horrific so much of the stuff in this episode
Yeah.
is. What are you doing? First of all, how did half of this stuff make it past the,
How did this make it past, the pitch phase?
oh my gosh. I can't... Why? What about this is any redeeming Supergirl and Superman basically beat this thing by happenstance because there happens to be a truck full of gas canisters.
Yeah.
That they're able to blow up one monster, and then Superman rips the other monster apart. That's what we learned here.
Yeah, they jawsed the one monster. They throw a gas container into it and then blow it up.
Yeah, it gets a negative point for me. I'm taking a point away from this thing because
That's incredible.
It's a children's cartoon, and I would never show this to a child.
No.
I wouldn't show this to an adult.
No.
It's so bad.
But that's maybe the thing. It's I wouldn't show it to a child because I think it would scar them, and I wouldn't show it to an adult because I would be embarrassed.
So do we even need to discuss rewatchability? This is a burn it, bury the episode. Can we request that DC Universe takes this off the streaming service, please?
I'd like it stricken from the canon.
Yes, nothing.
I need the DCAU timeline, guys. I need Maddie to figure out a way to make this episode not canon.
Please. This is so awful. All right, so that brings us to our final scores, Liam. With that point deduction, it brings me to a final score of 9
Jesus.
out of 40, which somehow seems way too high. 9 out of 40.
Yeah, I'm a little bit higher on mine. A 12 out of 40. Still, for both of us, clearly the lowest score we've ever given anything. It beats my previous record of Fear of Victory by 1 point, and you knocked yours down by 6 or 7 points lower than Fear of Victory. So
it's funny. Before, when we didn't discuss what we were giving our scores, but we were like, I don't know if this is worse than Fear of Victory. But then by the time you were done scoring, you're like, well, it's a lower score than Fear of Victory.
Yeah,
which is just crazy.
Yeah, and I think something like Fear of Victory, it shows you the power of sometimes that the music can add.
Yep.
The Scarecrow theme maybe saved the Fear of Victory score from being even lower. So, I guess the best thing I can say is that this episode has made me appreciate the good episodes of Superman and of all of these DCAU shows. I was thinking about stuff we might do down the line. Zeta Project doesn't seem so bad now, Season 1 of Static Shock doesn't seem so daunting anymore now that I've seen this Unity episode. How could they possibly be any worse?
It's going to take something historic. We know
that. If we ever have an episode that's ranked lower than this, I will be legitimately shocked.
Me too. It's going to take something real bad.
So, if for no other reason than that, we appreciate you tuning in today to hear a little piece of history.
Absolutely. And as we're wrapping up here, we thank you for listening. If you have thoughts on this episode, you think maybe we're being a little too hard on this episode, I can't imagine that you like this episode, but maybe you appreciate this episode. I don't know. I thought maybe people didn't like Fear of Victory, too, but we had a lot of stuff from that. So tweet Liam. He runs our Twitter account. He's at DCAU Review. Always sending out good stuff there. We'd love to hear your feedback on this and what your memories of this episode are, if you've watched it recently, anything else that we missed that was a plot hole or didn't make any sense. What are your thoughts on the X-ray vision projection as a way to defeat this thing? Please send us that feedback. We'd love to hear about it. Also, don't forget, check out the archives, DCAUreview.com, where you can check out a bunch of those other episodes that we talked about today, some of our other lower-ranked episodes. This is definitely going to be lumped in there. I'll have to create a new category for worst episodes or something like that.
Sounds good, yeah.
That way people can find them all together. But, thank you for tuning in today. And I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we'll talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Goodbye.
Thank God it's over.